We give you the betting tips and advice for the three most important games in college football each and every week here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, courtesy Steve Merrill, Pro Sports Info. So without Steve, we can't do it. So we ask you to head on over to prosportsinfo.com and check out Steve's work right there. All right, Steve, let's dive right into it. An interesting start time at the LA Coliseum with USC taking on Arizona State. If anybody doubted this, TV does rule college football and sports in general. So we've got a 9 a.m. local time start for the Trojans and the Sun Devils with USC as a 10.5-point favorite.
Yeah, very strange here. I had to do a triple check, obviously, when I saw this game was on Fox National TV. Yeah, that makes sense. But then when I saw noon Eastern, I'm like, well, that can't be right. But it is right. At 9 a.m. Pacific kickoff, as you mentioned, Mark. I don't know if it necessarily helps or hurts either team. I guess you could make an argument maybe it helps the home team, although Arizona State will be sitting in a hotel ready to go as well. Neither team has played yet this year, of course, so they've had plenty of time to prepare for this game in this early start. So I'm not sure it's too much of a handicapping factor. I do like USC in this game, though. Currently 10.5. There are some 11s out there, so I don't think it's going to drop back down to that key number of 10 or less. Favorites win by exactly 10 points, anywhere from 3 to 5% of the time. So I'd like to get 10 or less here. Normally I'd say wait, maybe it hits 10, but there are some 11s popping, so I don't think it's going to happen. But either way, I like USC here. I think they can win this by 2 touchdowns or more. People often say, how do you handicap the first game of the season here? These teams haven't played all year. Well, guess what? It's the same way I handicapped week 1 in September. It's the same way I handicap September every year in college football since there's no preseason. Same way I handicapped the Big Ten a couple weeks ago. I went 2-0 on Friday and Saturday with my best bets when the Big Ten debuted. I like to look for teams I think have the edge. That's USC here. And I'm not afraid to lay double digits here in game 1 because I think with either team having limited practice, no preseason, I think the better team has a huge edge more so in game 1 than they do later in the season. And I like USC here for that reason.
Georgia, Florida in a de facto SEC Eastern Division championship game, as it has been for the last 3 seasons now, playing at their customary time slot of 3:30 Eastern time and a customary location of Jacksonville, Florida. Always a neutral site for those two. Dogs and Gators should be a good one. Florida's a 3.5-point underdog.
Yeah, lined open 4, and it has come down to 3.5, as you mentioned. I'm actually seeing a couple 3s out there, Mark. And as you know, I say it every week, it's the most critical number in all of sports betting. Any sport is 3 in college and pro football. Favorites win by exactly a field goal 8 to 9% of the time. And this should be a competitive game. My power ratings actually make Georgia a 7-point favorite in this one. However, they do have up to 4 different defensive players questionable for this game. And that is why I do think the line's a little bit lower. What's interesting, though, Mark, is that the total opened 54, the over-under. It's now down to 52.5 in a lot of locations. So even with the defensive injuries, the total is dropping. Doesn't make a lot of sense there. Once again, I'd lean towards Georgia based on line value. I favor them by a full touchdown. I do think they're the better team. But obviously, I have some concern on the defensive side if they are banged up. But even with the injuries, I think they hold a substantial defensive edge. They allow 16 points a game. Florida allows 29. They allow 4.5 yards per play. Florida allows 5.8. Florida does have the better offense statistically this year, and Georgia has been challenged at times offensively. But in a competitively priced game, I like the better defensive team here in Georgia.
Check out Steve's work on prosportsinfo.com, prosportsinfo.com, of course, college football, but also, of course, the NFL. And finally, another strong game that's got national significance. And of course, when Notre Dame was allowed to join the ACC this year, I think ACC officials had this in mind. 2 undefeated teams. When Clemson goes to Notre Dame, 1 versus 4. The Irish a 5-point underdog at home.
Yeah, of course, the big news is Trevor Lawrence, star quarterback, likely number 1 NFL draft pick, Heisman Trophy favorite this season, at least he was, is out. He missed last week against Boston College with that late COVID test a couple days before the game. Clemson trailed by 18 early in that game. They came back to win, but came nowhere close to covering. Yet they actually played pretty well. I mean, if you look at the statistics in that game, they outgained BC 448 to 275. True freshman quarterback DJ Uiagalelei. I've been practicing that one for you, Mark. It's Uiagalelei. I'm pretty close on that one. 6 syllables.
That's really good. I like the extra la-la-lays in there, though.
Yeah,
gives it a little flair.
DJ is 2 syllables. Trevor Lawrence, 4 syllables. You got 8 syllables here. So if you had the over-under on syllables for the Clemson quarterback for this game, most people probably would have lost. But keep in mind, Trevor Lawrence was a true freshman as well and played extremely well his entire season. Uiagalelei played well last week. 30 for 41, 8.5 yards per pass, 342 passing yards. So I think he's more than capable. He actually is expected to be a superstar. But as you know, it's that intangible of having to play on the road against a top 10, really a top 5 opponent. It's hard to handicap that. My power ratings make Clemson -4.5. The line is 5, so it's pretty much spot on. But I think the intangibles favor Notre Dame at home as the home dog. And what's also interesting here, Mark, is that you've got the defensive edge, actually, surprisingly, with Notre Dame in this game. You know, we talk about how great the Clemson defense is, 15.5 points a game, 4.5 yards per play. Notre Dame's allowing 4.5 yards per play, and they're allowing just 10 points a game. And they've played pretty much equally strong schedules based on my power ratings. And their pass defense has been extremely strong, 5.8 yards per pass allowed. Clemson allows 6.6. And the other concern I have with Clemson, with the young quarterback on the road, is that they're not running the ball that well this year. They're averaging just 4.5 yards a rush against teams that allow 4.5 yards per rush. So I think the fact they're going to have trouble running the ball here is going to make it even tougher on a true freshman quarterback. You know, they had the ugly win last week, even though they played better than the 6-point margin. They're not going to get away with that this week. So I think if you're going to play this game, and I'm not sure you should, but if you're going to play it, I think you're probably safer with the home dog and Notre Dame, the more known quantity here.
Clemson missing 3 starters on defense, including their leader, James Skalski. 2 of those were expected back originally, but Dabo Swinney confirmed that all 3, Mike Jones and James Skalski, and also the defensive tackle as well, Davis, will be out this Saturday against Notre Dame. All right, join us on Patreon. You will get Steve's Lock of the Week, under the radar selection, right there on Patreon. Again, Steve, we appreciate it.